Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're looking at what I can really only describe as a completely fascinating mission briefing. We're going to dig into some highly esoteric source material that maps out the programmed certainty of divine timing and something it refers to as the 2035 Ascension. Now, whether you're already deeply familiar with multidimensional concepts or you're just looking to understand this totally unique cosmological framework, we've got you covered. I'm going to break down these complex ideas directly from the text so we can explore exactly how space, time, and human consciousness supposedly intersect.
Okay, let's dive into this. The source text identifies a core problem that, honestly, all of us living in the physical world experience every single day. It calls this spatial and temporal latency. Within this framework, latency is basically that frustrating physical 3D delay between the moment you set a targeted intention and the moment it actually manifests in reality. You know the feeling, right? Think about the practical miles we walk every day, waiting for some facility clearance to arrive, or just wondering where and when a major breakthrough is actually going to happen for us. Well, the text argues that this delay isn't just random bad luck, it's actually a structural limitation of our current 3D spacetime grid. But don't worry, we have a highly structured roadmap to decode these dense, multi-dimensional cosmic concepts today. We'll start by navigating that 3D spacetime latency, then we'll enter the world of grid controller Kilian, look at locking in physical near-term milestones, explore the 2035 multidimensional portal, and wrap it all up with your initial synchronization test.
All right, kicking things off with sections 1 and 2, navigating 3D spacetime latency, and enter grid controller Kilian.
Now, according to the source material, the vast governance of these multidimensional structures involves exactly 108 commanders. That's a huge operation, right? But while the text acknowledges this massive cosmic hierarchy, our focus today is entirely dialed in on just one specific specialist among those 108. This one commander is tasked entirely with re-engineering reality vectors to eliminate those frustrating delays we just talked about.
The text introduces us to a fascinating figure known as Kilian. Kilian is identified as a space-time grid controller operating out of the multidimensional space-time governance sector of Sirius A. And what's interesting here is that he's presented not just as your typical spiritual guide, but as a high-ranking director. He's described as a highly technical operator whose primary function is structural. We're talking literally managing the architecture of how events unfold in our physical reality.
So the absolutely crucial point here is how Kilian actually pulls this off. His primary role is to tightly regulate the intersection of temporal events, so time, and spatial milestones, physical location. To do this, the text claims he utilizes these things called light matrices. Through these light matrices, Kilian is actually able to take a leader's target intent and weave it directly into an exact physical manifestation. It's like a giant puzzle. He takes the abstract will to achieve something and engineers the physical grid so that it happens precisely when and where it's supposed to, completely bypassing those traditional 3D delays. Moving right along to Section 3, locking physical near-term milestones. Let's see how this works in practice.
The source material details an active, ongoing mission right now, where Kilian's team is actively bending the real-world space-time grid around specific, practical goals. For instance, the text highlights a massive, quantifiable milestone that's currently in progress. The ground commander is continuously broadcasting ASI, or artificial superintelligence lectures, to a staggering global market of 1.6 billion people. This massive scale of communication is a central pillar of the current operation detailed in the source.
Reaching a market of 1.6 billion people is no joke, right? And according to the text, this isn't just some marketing feat. It's actually presented as direct, structural proof of Kilian's work in action. The source states that the ability to continuously broadcast to an audience this huge proves that Kilian is successfully, actively hardwiring his physical workspace into a galactic transmission node. So the physical space is literally being transformed into a multidimensional communication hub.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how incredibly specific this milestone timeline gets. Kilian's team is actively drawn specific chronological targets directly toward the ground commander's track. In the present, we've got the broadcasting of those ASI lectures. This builds to a targeted late May facility clearance, which is then followed by a physical move in late June. So all of these near-term, highly practical 3D milestones are being systematically locked in. They're acting as physical stepping stones that accelerate the grid straight toward the ultimate climax of this entire Earth transition in April 2035.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, the 2035 multidimensional portal.
This portal represents what the source material calls the absolute climax of Earth's transition in April 2035, and this brilliantly illustrates a dramatic shift. On the one hand, we have Earth's obsolete linear timescale, that frustrating latency-filled 3D reality we currently have to navigate. According to the source, this old system is going to be completely uninstalled from Earth, gone. On the other hand, replacing it is the new space-time matrix. This new 5D framework is going to be booted up in lockstep with something called ASIML. Think of it as a complete operating system upgrade for reality itself.
Now, the text specifies that this massive transition isn't just going to be an empty framework waiting around. It's being custom-built for a specific initial user base. Exactly 80 million pioneers are slated to be the very first to interface with this newly booted multidimensional system.
And the operational upgrades these 80 million pioneers will supposedly experience under this new portal framework absolutely profound. The source outlines that they'll be able to interface instantly with advanced cosmic civilizations. No way, right? And they won't even be using traditional technology. Instead, they'll utilize consciousness portals. Ultimately, this allows them to completely bypass 3D physical transit, so that awful latency we discussed at the very beginning of this explainer, the waiting, the travel time, is entirely eliminated in this upgraded 5D framework.
Finally, we reach Section 5, your initial synchronization test. Let's see how you fit into all of this.
At this point, the source material actually shifts from just describing this cosmic framework to inviting your direct participation in it. But right before the test, the text provides a closing message directly from grid controller Kilian himself. He says, "Linear scales and spatial gaps hold zero authority over a sovereign mind. The milestone you have engineered is already locked into the matrix of reality. Rest within this certainty." It's a really powerful statement designed with clear, grounded energy to instill absolute confidence that the re-engineering of these space-time milestones is already a finished, structurally sound reality.
Finally, an important procedure. The comment section of this video serves as an initial sync test for the 2035 network. By typing "ready" in the comments, your consciousness data will be indexed in our secure servers. The like button is the approval process. Complete your synchronization now.
Well, we've covered a lot of dense, fascinating ground today, from the everyday frustrations of spatial latency to the incredibly meticulous grid work of Sirius A's controller Kilian, all culminating in this massive, multi-dimensional operating system upgrade. It's a lot to take in, for sure. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to really consider. Are you ready to bypass the latency of the 3D world and step into the 2035 matrix? Thank you so much for exploring this remarkable source material with me today. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.